treatment of children in Indian residential schools is a sad chapter in our history. Two primary objectives of the residential school system were to remove and isolate children and to assimilate them into the dominant culture.
All she said to me was to be good and to listen, and she never said any more. I don't think they could even fathom what would happen.
They built these schools away from the reserve and run by the churches.
My name is Alice Little Deer. I'm 78 years old. I spent about 8 years in residential school. I got frightened when I was a little girl when the principal used to beat up the other children, like boys. The boys got the most beating. They used to call it bench party, and it was usually done after supper. And that's where I got frightened, because I saw blood.
My name is Raymond Mason. I'm 62 years old, and I attended residential school for 12 years.
In order to educate the children properly, we must separate them from their families. Some people may say that this is hard, but if we want to civilize them, we must do that. A federal cabinet minister, 1883.
I remember them taking me away from my mother and my stepfather. And I can hear them telling my mom that that was the best thing for me, you know, and that not to worry, I would be looked after. So the next day, I woke up with hundreds of total strangers, my size, my age, and not knowing, you know, what are they doing with all of us here? Why are there's so many of us here, you know? And that's where a lot of my whole life really started to change, because I got strapped, I got beaten up for speaking my own native tongue. I even had my tongue pulled out and pinched, you know.
My strongest memory there is when the little girl died beside me. She must have been about 6. I was scared why the parents were not there. That's what I was scared about. And I knew they wouldn't feel comfortable for not being there when their daughter is dying.
And do you know why they weren't there?
They were never notified.
Indian children in the residential schools die at a much higher rate than in their villages. But this does not justify a change in the policy of this department, which is geared towards a final solution of our Indian problem. Duncan Campbell Scott, Deputy Superintendent of Indian Affairs.
At that time, they never told us that our sisters were across the hallway. And I didn't know that for the longest time. Then I spotted my sister, Nora, and I was so glad and so hysteric, and I went running to her and I reached onto her, you know, and just hugged her, and I was just shaking, like, you know, and terrified. And I was wondering why she was pushing me away. I didn't realize that we weren't supposed to know that we both lived in the same place, and we weren't allowed to speak to each other. We weren't allowed to talk to each other. And I can remember the principal grabbing a hold of me by the hand, you know, and I was jumping off the floor like that, and he stripped me. And he started whacking me with a long webbed a strap.
staying at home with us. They knew how to hunt ducks, and they knew how to fish, and they knew how to snare rabbits and pick blueberries. Today you don't see that.
And you think that's the school?
Yeah. Everything destroyed in our world. We didn't bother white people. White people bothered me.
Indian culture is a contradiction in terms. They are uncivilized. The aim of education is to destroy the Indian. Nicholas Flood David Report, 1879.
I guess it's just that family connection and just not having some kind of memory at times. And it always goes back to being robotic. No feeling, no emotions, no nothing. If you got hurt, no one was there to comfort you. You know, things like just things that as a child I should have gotten from a loving parent, you know, or an adult who looked after me. No one ever read to me. You know, no one ever came and cuddled me or, you know, gave me a hug if I was feeling sad or upset or I'd fallen down, and no one was there for me. I had to just basically pick myself up and keep going.
Did your parents go to residential schools?
Yes, they did. She just told me that she had actually gotten punched in the face for speaking her language, and she flew across the room, she said, and landed against a rad, and her tooth protruded through her upper lip, so she had a scar on her lip. She also told us that she did not teach us her language, which was Ojibwe, because she didn't want us to experience what she went through. It was her way of protecting us. My dad, he just kind of said, you know what, he says, with you, he says, we were like little robots. We were like little soldiers, he says. We used to parade around like soldiers, he said. And we were so hungry. And that's where he learned how to eat raw potatoes. I used to wonder why he used to eat raw potatoes, but they were hungry. So they would eat raw potatoes, and then they'd take some of the potatoes and at night and they'd exchange for bread with other students. If I was to give advice, I would suggest that people start to listen, to allow us to talk and to be heard and to listen. That's such an integral piece of this whole process, is listening and actually believing us. And it's affected us in many ways personally, you know, in our everyday life, our relationships with people and our family. And it's because of that relationship being affected, we can't be who we should be as healthy individuals, as parents, you know, community members, cousins, relatives, any kind of relations that we have. I think that's very important, and that we all sit together. It's nice when we can sit together too and talk, you know, like how can we move forward? Let's move together. Let's move forward together.